The Pyro Archon Mavuika is finally here, and after weeks of speculation and wondering how good will she actually be, could she be the Xiangling replacement we've all been waiting for? Will she be the best DPS in the game? Well, we finally know. I've tested Mavuika with 30 plus different teams to give my final verdict to help you decide if you should get her and how to make the most out of her if you do. Welcome to Jello Impact, where we build and test every single character to help you decide who you want to wish for and build. Rather than do a full build guide for her, I'm going to show you my build and let you know when I used a different build during each team that I tested. You can follow timestamps below to see how she works with your favorite characters. My Mavuika is level 90. She is talent level 9 on her burst and talent level 7 on her skill. I was unable to get that third drop the second time, so we couldn't take it to 8. And the fact that she's not even max talent, this would be a character that I either 10-9 or 10-10, depending on how I'm feeling. She will get a decent little bit stronger getting this final multiplier. That's not insignificant of a final multiplier. So everything you're seeing here could be even stronger. And this going up 3 more levels still will be stronger as well. I know she has a normal attack playstyle, but I didn't test that here because I'm unwilling to level mine up too much. Well, maybe I guess I have a few talent books. But no, I didn't really want to test a level 6 normal attack. She is, of course, Constellation 0, and I did test her with her signature weapon. Her signature weapon, while very good for her, isn't absolutely massive. If you have any other 5-star claymores, such as Verdict, Beacon, Wolf's Gravestone, etc., I talked about it in my other Mavuika video, they're really not that far from her signature, so you're really fine if you have Red Horn or some other 5-star, and the craftable is okay, and you'll definitely perform very well and be able to 36-star and do all the content in Genshin very easily with a free-to-play claymore. But I generally test all the characters with their signature as a baseline, mostly so I don't have to switch weapons all the time and they just look cooler. For my build, so I have a pretty good Obsidian Codex build, 100 crit rate, 216 crit damage. I'm using Elemental Mastery Sands for most of these. For the unreacted teams, of course, I'm using an attack Sands. It's not the best Sands in the world, for sure. It's actually pretty bad, but it's all I have for Elemental Mastery. My Goblet's very good. Circlet's very good. Flower's very good. And Feather's very good. Really, really excellent feather. But the Sands is keeping us a little bit relatable. Overall, she has around 220 crit value and a decent bit of an attack and EM subs. Actually, she doesn't have any EM subs, but a few attack subs here and there. So overall, this is quite a strong build, but nothing you can't achieve with some dedicated farming. So there's her final stat line. Without further ado, this is my full testing sheet. If you want a copy of this yourself, check out the Tactor link below and you can see a nice clean screenshot of this. Starting off with her DPS playstyle, this is her overall best in slot team, Xiaolonen, Bennett, and Citlali. Yes, it is very expensive, but this is the team you want to aim for in the long run. Hey, if you can't get Citlali right now, that's fine. There's tons of other options that are extremely strong, and you can get Citlali when she hopefully eventually reruns. Hopefully she doesn't join cryo jail. You know, do your best to get Citlali, as she is the best partner for Mavuika overall, but it's not the end of the world. There's tons of other teams. That being said, this team is ridiculous. I was able to hit a 1.1 million damage burst, and that's again, not even talent level 10 Mavuika. And she cleared the Geo Bishop in just 36 seconds. This is absolutely unheard of for any team that I've used on the Geo Bishop. I did most of my testing on the second side on the Geo Bishop because there's a little bit of AoE, a little bit of multi-wave, and then a big beefy single target guy. It is by no means scientific. I just did a bunch of runs with each team and posted my best time here. It's more of a guideline of a reasonable peak that the team could achieve by a somewhat skill issue player. It's not meant to be a speed run time, the actual absolute best time, and there's definitely a bit of variance, you know, with better play, especially with better Mavuika combos. All of these times could be probably improved, and probably some of them are slower than they really should be, etc, etc. But I think it is a good baseline to at least look at. That being said, beating this chamber in just 36 seconds is nuts. The fastest I had previously was Arlecchino getting a frankly still absurd 37 seconds, so I know it's only 1 second faster, but again, keep in mind that she isn't even fully maxed out yet, whereas my Arlecchino is fully crowned, and on top of that, Mavuika is much easier to play. Granted, that Arlecchino team deleted the chamber so fast that it was very easy to play and had a shield, so maybe not much easier to play, but she is at least a little bit easier to play. Arlecchino is frankly nuts as well with Citlali. I'm definitely gonna go ahead and say that, well, I'll actually save the comparison for Arlecchino later on, but yeah, this team is crazy. There were some questions on would the melts be reliable, and it really comes down to mostly your combos. I had the best luck doing the 4 charge attack, and then you let go and use her final move, and then you do another 4 charge attack, and then she uses her final move again. That's just the generic melt combo. If you want a super in-depth combo guide, you can check out Zajeff's video. I always have Zajeff linked in the description. So yeah, Citlali, Shenhe, Bennett, very, very excellent. But what if you don't have it? That's fine. We switched out Shenhe for a bunch of different cryos. For example, putting Rosaria here netted quite good results, able to get 55 seconds, but I actually didn't have as good of results with Rosaria as I did with Diona. And that's because Diona provides an EM buff at C6, and it's really handy because Diona's on the banner. So if you went to town on this particular banner and you're able to get a high constellation Diona, and which you probably did if you got both Citlali and Mavuika, this is probably a team that you have access to. Obviously, Bennett is also on the banner, so this is like the banner team. And to see a team, 49 seconds, to see it do this well and be the banner team, obviously Citlali, definitely a luxury pull. You would have definitely had to save up to get both of these characters or gotten really lucky, but it's nice to see that if you were, and if you wished a lot on this banner, that you're rewarded with a very good team, and you can upgrade your Diona to a Shenhe eventually, but you don't have to. Diona also allows you to run Shenhe on the other side, which is also very, very valuable. As you know, I always make Shenhe work whenever I can, so I put Shenhe on this team as well. It's pretty cool because she buffs Citlali's burst. So if you build some damage on your Citlali, she does lots of damage just through EM, but her burst is a little mini nuke, and Shenhe helps with extra cryo application so Mavuika can melt more reliably, and she also gives a bit of a buff through her skill. So overall, it's not the best synergy for Shenhe, but it is technically Shenhe's best team, which is awesome. I always love making Shenhe work. If I play DPS Mavuika, this is probably the team I'll default to because I love hitting those big melts, and I love running Shenhe on my teams. So in just 53 seconds, very, very close. You can also swap out Shenhe for Kazuha or Sucrose. I talked about this type of team in my Citlali video, and I'm just not a fan of VV Vape anymore. There's so many easier things that you can do, because remembering to do the right rotation is very, very annoying. For most of these teams, the rotation is a super simple. Start with Mavuika's skill, use Shenhe's skill and burst, use Bennett's skill and burst, use Citlali's skill and burst, and then go to town with your Mavuika combo. Very, very simple, very, very easy. If you're to use Kazuha, now all of a sudden you have to open with Citlali's skill and then maybe normal attack to clear any pyro. Then you infuse Kazuha's burst with cryo so that you can get more melts. Then you got to use Mavuika's skill because you have to use it at some point. Then you're going to use Bennett's skill and burst. Then you're going to swap back onto Kazuha to swirl pyro, and you do a hold skill. And then you use Citlali's skill and burst to reapply, no, not skill and burst, just burst. And that should clear the pyro and apply enough cryo for you to melt your first hit. And yes, this will do lots of damage, but oh boy, is that a lot to remember to switch back and forth and do the right thing, especially in the heat of battle. It's so much easier just to do one of the teams that you don't have to VV swirl in the right order and infuse, and oh my god, I'm so over it now that I don't have to do it anymore. Now that we have other good options, I'm frankly really over it. But hey, kudos to those who make it work because it is very strong. I did try and leave Shenhe here and use C6 Kaya as the sole cryo applicator. I personally couldn't get it to make it work that good. It's the timing of Mavuika's skill application that you have to actively pay attention to when using Kaya's skill and burst, and I just don't like doing that. I don't like paying attention to these types of things and making sure that I'm getting the cryo aura so I can melt, and oh my, no, No, it's too much for me. And you can call me skill issue, but I think it's too much for a lot of you guys out there as well. If it's for you, great. I still got a pretty good minute and 4-second clear time, but it should be much faster. I barely melted anything, and you can do better if you want to do better. It does require Kaya C6. Anything less than that probably isn't enough cryo, but you can always use double cryo with Citlali. That's your other solution. Yeah, something that I didn't see anyone talk about is using Emily, and this may seem really weird at first because this is a melt burning team, but I basically got this idea from the Kinich team that I tried out, which I'll talk about later. But basically this team just gives up on melting anything but the burst. You start with Emily, you skill and burst with Bennett, you skill and burst with Citlali, and then you melt your first hit and you do lots of damage, yay for melts. Then you just give up on melting anything else. And she applies enough pyro that you have burning going with Emily, and Emily just adds so much damage to the team. Emily's a great, amazing character that it ends up being pretty much on the same level as all the melty teams and all the vapey teams. Except for the premium team, it pretty much did just as well as the ones where you actually melt, and you don't need to worry at all about actually melting anything, or doing reactions, or doing the right combos, or whatever. It's a very mash-friendly team. You just have to make sure that you use the Citlali skill and burst so that you can melt the first hit. That's all you have to do. So I really like this for like a mashy-friendly team. I definitely recommend trying it out if you do have Emily. Yay. And that pretty much does it for melt, so let's go over vape. The first one is Farina, Bennett, Citlali. Oftentimes I run Bennett on instructors for extra melt damage. So on most of the melt teams, I'm running Bennett on instructors and the cryo unit on noblesse. But for Farina teams, I go back to noblesse for Bennett. One, because I don't need to run noblesse because nobody else is running noblesse. But two, more importantly, you get more HP stats for Bennett. With noblesse, you're going to get more Farina stacks for healing. For the first rotation, you want to open with Farina, and for the second rotation, you can either open Farina or use Bennett first and then skill and burst with Farina inside Bennett's burst to get more healing. You'll always at least get some stacks from using Bennett after Farina because you're going to use Citlali's burst and skill inside Bennett's circle anyways, so you're at least going to get healing on Citlali and Mavuika, which will generate enough Farina fanfare stacks to be worth it. But if you're really tight with your combos, it could be worth it to do Farina after Bennett from the second rotation onwards to get some more healing onto your Farina, but that's sort of up to you, dealer's choice. This team is great. You're gonna get a mix of melts and vapes. You're gonna hopefully melt your first hit, which is awesome, and then after that, you'll be getting a lot of vapes. Team is super comfy. You've got a shielder and a healer. Yeah, Farina takes some HP, but with a shielder and a healer, you're perfectly fine. Pretty much indestructible. And yeah, I got a fantastic time. You can also replace Citlali with Shalonen and go for more of a dedicated vape setup. This rotation, you're gonna open with Shalonen, then use Bennett, and then you do want to end with Farina. Reason being is you want to make sure that there's hydro right on the enemy to vape. If you use Bennett after Farina, you run the risk of not enough hydro coming in to allow Mavuika to vape her first hit, and it's very important she does that. You use Shalonen first so you can get the scroll of the Cinder City artifact set off of Mavuika. For this team, where when you're running Shalonen without Citlali, you want to be running her on the scroll set. When you're running her with Citlali, you'll usually be running Shalonen on the Archaic Petra artifact set. Shalonen is awesome on the Archaic Petra artifact set because she applies the Crystallize, and usually the Crystallize spawns right in front of her and she can very easily pick it up. So it really reduces a lot of the janks. So yeah, really like that. And for this one, to get max damage, you'll want to do two charge attacks into a dash attack, 2 charge attacks, dash attack, and just rinse repeat that until the end, and that'll be your best combo here, or at least your generally best combo. There's lots of different combo options for Mavuika. I did play this with Xingqiu instead of Farina and with Yelan instead of Farina. I think my Xingqiu just was on not enough energy, so it should be a little bit better than this, but Yelan technically is the best choice just because she does give that damage bonus as well, and she provides easily enough hydro to vape. The nice thing is when Mavuika does her charge attack, she starts her normal attack animation, so even if you don't do a normal attack, it still triggers Yelan's or Xingqiu's swords, and they provide enough to vape all of Mavuika's vapeable hits. So it's the same 2 charge attack dash, 2 charge attack dash combo, and this team was just awesome. I loved it a lot. I did want to make sure to try a fully free-to-play team. At least one. And Keqing is on the banner, so very realistic for you to obviously have a bunch of copies of her. Xingqiu and Bennett Bennett are both available from the Star Glitter shop, and Xingqiu available from the Lantern Rite. So these are ones that are considered free-to-play friendly. And of course, you can replace Xingqiu with Yelan or Furina on this team and do even better. But just as like a free-to-play investment, Keqing is providing Night Soul points, Bennett the attack buff, Xingqiu allowing us to vape. We were able to get a very nice 1 minute and 10-second clear. Again, this is Mavuika Honor Signature, so maybe it's a bit slower if you have a free-to-play weapon, but it's still very much 36 starable as a free-to-play. Of course, the more pieces you take out, the lower it's going to perform, but this just shows how powerful Mavuika is by herself at a baseline, getting a very, very strong clear just with free-to-play teammates. And of course, as soon as you replace Keqing for either Citlali or Xiaolonen, it's a big upgrade, and most accounts, especially if you have Mavuika, should easily have Citlali or Xiaolonen eventually. So if you don't have them now, Keqing can stand in, and my Keqing is just level 70, so you don't need to fully invest in her. Just give her the Natlan artifact set and you're good to go. One thing you can also do here, if you happen to have Chiori, is you can do this, and it should perform fairly similar to Bennett. I would actually expect it to perform on about the same level. Chiori Keqing core is very, very strong, but your Chiori does need to be well invested for this to be. Moving on to Chevreuse teams. I only tried one Chevreuse team because I think it's the only one that really makes a ton of sense, but you can also replace Bennett with Fischl or Yoimiya for some off-field electro damage, but I just tried it with Bennett. You open with Roro Ron, Chevreuse burst and skill, then Bennett skill and burst, and then go to town with Mavuika. This is nice because you don't have to worry about reactions, but it's less nice because you can't get any reactions. So Mavuika definitely gets a ton of damage from vaping or melting her first hit, and some of her charge attacks are pretty good to be reacted with as well, but especially missing out on the vapor melt on that first hit is a ton of damage. It is a ridiculous multiplier, so missing out on that here is not ideal, but that being said, it still performed very serviceably. If you want to do this, you absolutely can, and I know that people are going to be clamoring for non-Bennett teams, so I made sure to test some non-Bennett teams. Granted, they are still very expensive teams, so if you want to be free to play, use your Bennett. But if you've invested, you know, if you've invested a lot into your account and you have really good characters, I don't just mean money. I don't mean money. I just mean, you know, invested in good characters. You can run strong characters and not run Bennett and do very well. So either using Furina or Yelan, and then the Xiaolonen Citlali core, both are very, very good. I feel like the Furina team should do as well as the Yelan team. There's no reason Yelan should particularly do better. I got a better time. But what's cool about it, both of these teams got very, very, very similar times to Bennett teams. So yeah, you're hogging more powerful characters and some really high value units, but you don't have to use Circle Impact. You don't have to use Bennett if you hate him. So I know people are going to be happy about that. And there's no Circle Impact, and you're not affected by Pyro, so enemies can't vape you. So that's always a positive as well. Although with Xiaolonen and Citlali, you know, you're very taken care of in terms of survivability. So not too much to worry about there. But not being in Circle Impact is very nice. Also, if you have Chiori or Albedo, they are a great choice. And here, this was my time for C1 Chiori. Note that it is C1 Chiori, so she gets a pretty big 25% boost. But this is also a heavy geo-resistant enemy, and that pretty much negates the boost that she gets. So actually, even C0 Chiori or Albedo is really, really good here. Albedo giving EM buff gives him some value over C0 Chiori. Of course, C1 Chiori just provides enough damage that it's going to be better. And the nice thing is they don't provide too much geo, that you still should be able to melt most of your hits. And there's no Circle Impact, and Citlali giving a shield means you get geo resonance, which is a very powerful resonance. So overall, really, really big fan of this core. The Xiaolonen Chiori core is amazing. So she does have Bennett-less options, and she is strong without Bennett. And in terms of Citlali-less options, like most of the vape teams, except for this one, I guess that maybe that should be in the melt section, but they are Citlali-less teams. A lot of the, I wanted to talk a little bit about the trend I've been seeing. I don't know if I want to talk about it in a video by itself, but I've seen a lot of creators saying that Mavuika is strong, but she's expensive. Mavuika is strong, but blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, yeah, like the strong characters need the strong supports. Arlecchino's best team also needs Citlali, right? If you don't have, like, Xiaolonen also got a buff from Xiaolonen. Like, Novelette also really wants Xiaolonen. Like, all units require strong other characters. Novelet also wants Farina, or now he has sort of a new best team in my opinion. But basically I'm saying that Mavuika works with a very wide variety of characters, and she has very, very strong teams across the board. Yeah, you need strong characters for strong teams. That's a given, but almost every single character is very reliant on good supports for their best teams. And of course, Mavuika, just like all strong DPSs, can easily get by with really cope supports. It's just not as good as her premium teams. And I don't think that that is a failing on Mavuika. It's unfortunate that Sitlali is running at the exact same time as Mavuika, because you might have a hard time getting both. So you might have to catch one of them on the rerun. But aside from that, like, her kit itself is very, very strong, regardless of whether you have her best supports or whether you're using other supports. So I don't think that that is a fair critique of Mavuika. Moving on to her supportive roles, where I tested her with a lot of different characters. As your dedicated Clorinde simp and main, you know, of course, that the very first thing I did upon getting Mavuika was play her with Clorinde. On this team, it's a little bit different. There's two things you can do. You can say goodbye to Fischl and run Ron instead. That allows your Mavuika to run on the DPS set. She'll charge her burst a little bit faster and do more damage with her burst. But I personally found this was not quite as good as using Fischl and then running Mavuika herself on the scroll of Hero Cinder City. I've been farming it a lot, so I had a pretty good set of the scroll of Hero Cinder City. So you run her normal, you run her attack, pyro damage, and crit, but on the hero of the Cinder City. And otherwise her build's the same, you know, same weapon, same everything, just a different artifact set, and you just build her for damage on that set. She doesn't get her full powered burst. It's just barely back up at the end of your rotation to use her burst. But her burst technically has a longer cooldown than Clorinde's skill, so you can just burst every other rotation, and then sometimes it's not the right time to burst, or you can wait for her burst. It's sort of totally up to you how you want to play it. You can also burst and then use maybe a couple charge attacks to fill the rotation time from the second rotation onwards. For the first rotation, you don't do that. But regardless of that, it's sort of inconsequential. The long and short of it is this team slaps hard. The Geo Bishop, I got the same time with the Mavuika team as I did with the Toma team. But remember that the shield bounces back the Geo Bishop's attack and helps you defeat it faster. So I compared it on side 1-1 instead. And on side 1-1, it was a 10-second improvement, 51 seconds, one of the very fastest time, on par with Novelet's fastest time of clearing side 1, which is awesome. I'm not saying Clorinde is as good as Novelet. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying this is a crazy time, and especially since he resists Electro on the Geo Bishop very heavily. So a 52-second clear on the Geo Bishop is really, really good. And because Clorinde's actually running with Chevreuse coming up, I can actually expect you guys to have C6 Chevreuse one day for your Clorinde. So this is officially Clorinde's new best team. Mavuika does lots of off-field damage, little bitty burst, little nice burst nuke, sub DPS damage. You are foregoing a shield, so you have to be pretty good at like anticipating the enemy's future attack patterns and dodging around the enemy. If you don't like the idea of that, you can just go with Toma. Toma is still great, but Mavuika is a nice upgrade for those dedicated Clorinde mains. I would not say that you need Mavuika for Clorinde's best team, because Toma provides that defensive utility. A lot of people will still prefer Toma, especially mobile players, but dedicated mains like me are very happy to have a pretty noticeable upgrade and honestly a very fast time. I really, really like the state of Clorinde right now. Next is Mualani. As you guys know, I also simp for Mualani, so I was very excited to hopefully get an upgrade to Mualani teams. Unfortunately, although it does work, it is very painful and very annoying. And you trade not having to worry about Shengling's ER for a little bit of inconsistency with vaping. Most of the time it is fine, but Mualani already has so many annoying parts to her kit that it's annoying. And I think the most annoying part is you can't properly run Sitlali Mavuika, because what you'd like to do is you use Sitlali's skill and burst, and then melt Mavuika's burst, and then use her skill, and then go into Mualani and go to town for vaping damage. The problem is, if you use Sitlali's burst, then you're going to have too much cryo, and you're not going to be able to vape Mualani's hits, and that is a really big problem for this team. so you have to forgo the burst, which means you might not be able to get the melt. And you still can, and it still ends up being one of her best times, and it's still one of the fastest clears. The problem is it's so tricky to do, and it only raised the ceiling of Mualani a little bit, whereas Citlali and Mavuika raised the ceiling of C0 Novelette quite a bit. Raised the ceiling of C0 Arlecchino quite a bit. Even the ceiling of C0 Clorinde quite a bit. And so Mualani was buffed less than the other characters. She's still really janky. So for me, Mualani actually kind of got hit this patch, comparatively speaking, because her jank is not solved and her peaks aren't quite as impressive because there's also Mavuika herself. If you're playing this team, you have Mavuika's best team, and Mualani, I was really impressed by her 800,000 burst nuke, for example, by her 600,000 charge attack nukes. But now you're nuking Mavuika for 1.1, probably 1.2 million damage when we crown her burst, and Mavuika now has a higher ceiling than Mualani, but with way less jank. It used to be that Mualani had the highest ceiling, but now with Citlali, Mavuika and Arlecchino both feel like they have higher ceilings than Mualani and with less jank. So I'm unhappy. I'm not happy, Bob. Not happy. I did, of course, replace Citlali with my old tried and true Mona, and this was fine as well. It's probably smartest to use Mona right before Mavuika and then vape Mavuika's burst, which I didn't do. I used Mona last. You're gonna lose a bit of damage with Mualani, but that's probably the smartest thing to do. I'm going to try it again, and I'll update it. Like after I finish recording this, I'm gonna try that again, and I'll update it in a box if this ends up being better than using it before. So I guess what I'm saying is I think Mavuika is a good pull, and could be an upgrade for Mualani teams, is an upgrade for Mualani teams for most people because you don't have to deal with Xiangling, but at the same time, you're sort of just way better off using Mavuika. Mavuika too strong. I talked about this in my Citlali video, but Shalon and Citlali Mavuika is an upgrade for C0 Novelette. Yes, you don't get Farina, but you get lots of damage bonus from Shalon running Archaic Petra, from Citlali running the Scroll, and then Mavuika's vaping her hits, giving a ton of front load to a team that didn't have, or actually she's melting her hits and getting a ton of front load. She's buffed a lot by these two as well. And then she's able to vape from off field, which also does a lot of damage. So you run Mavuika for damage on this team, and it's awesome. This team is crazy, and it's so easy to use. Like, having a shield for C0 Novelette is amazing, and I got significantly faster teams, so I'm very, very happy with this C0 Novelette team. If you want to not invest in Novelette constellations and instead invest in more characters, this is a great option. Granted, this is a very high value team. You're stealing a lot of units for your second side. You probably should be running DPS Mavuika on one side and DPS Novelette on the other. You're probably not slamming all these characters together all at once. It's very inefficient, probably. But you can also replace Citlali with Farina here, and that works great. And you can also replace Shalonen with Farina. So no matter what, you can mix and match. You're getting a good team. I definitely prefer to keep Citlali for the shield for C0 Novelette, but C1 you can do whatever. Chasca. So this is fun. You use Bennett, then Citlali's Seal and Burst, and then you get to melt Mavuika's Burst, giving Chasca a huge amount of front load, and then go to town with your DPS Chasca. This is what I like to call both this and the Novelette and the Mualani to an extent. This is dual DPS Mavuika, and I really like dual DPS Mavuika. Sure, it's not quite as strong as using main DPS Mavuika, but it frees up your Shalonen for the other side, which is a huge amount of value. You get the really satisfying melted burst nuke with Mavuika, and your other DPS gets to do a ton of damage. So this is Chasca's best team in my testing, or at least it's exactly the same as the Farina version. It's pretty much on par with the Farina version. So just depends if you want to free up your Farina for the other side or your Mavuika for the other side. It's also just really, really fun. And also I was pretty close to run one rotating here. So this time could be quite a bit better. Very similarly, you can do the same thing with Kinich. And I was super close to one rotating. So this team should have been quite a bit, not this one could be quite a bit better this time, for sure in the 40 seconds. And it's awesome. This is actually my favorite Kinich team. Someone recommended it in the comments of my Citlali video. I thought for sure it was going to be the Emily variant that was far and away the best. And the Emily variant was good, don't get me wrong, but I prefer this one. Citlali on the scroll set, Mavuika on DPS. You melt the first hit, and then Kinich still gets enough burning to do his full damage, and he does lots of damage on this team, and so does Mavuika. So really, really love, and I love the vibe of a dual DPS team, especially with the Natlin characters, like Mavuika coming in for a big slam and then also being able to support the other Natlin cast. I really, really like the synergy. Really big fan. If you decide to go the Emily variant, still very good. You want to run Emily on Deepwood. Although I actually got slightly better results with her on her signature set than I did with Deepwood. I don't think that's replicatable, but you're supposed to run her on Deepwood, and then you run Mavuika on the Scroll of Hero of the Cinder City set, and then Kinich for big damage. So great team. For this, you want to use Bennett last in the rotation because you don't need to melt anyone. This team gives much higher personal damage to Kinich. The other one has a bit higher team damage. Yeah. For Wriothesley lovers, I have some good news and bad news. For me, the bad news was I don't love his hyper carry team. It didn't feel like it's a really huge improvement over the Xiangling one. I felt like it wasn't that hard to get the energy onto Xiangling. I felt like the melts were a little bit more consistent with Xiangling. I feel like if I don't do the right combos, it's supposed to be normal attack five times into charge attack for this setup. I felt like if I didn't do the exact right combo and if I charge attack too much, then it didn't work. Whereas with Xiangling, I was able to be a bit more free. But all is not lost. The team I like a lot was the Citlali version. I know what you're thinking. Citlali doesn't buff Wriothesley. Well, Wriothesley is the cryo driver on this team. So Wriothesley is providing cryo along with Citlali for Mavuika to off-field melt her burst. I know that sounds weird in cope, but it works, and it works really, really well. You run Mavuika on the DPS set, and she melts her burst, and then you go to 2 normal attacks into charge attack and apply that on-field cryo where Mavuika, she melts her burst in Bennett's circle and then melts off-field skills after that. This team will also get a big improvement when I level up my Mavuika's skill. Just haven't been able to do that yet. Yeah, actually like a really, really good time. So very, very impressed. Navia winning big. This was a really, really nice team for Navia. Her time versus others is not really comparable because the Geo Bishop resists Geo very heavily, but a minute is very good for a heavily resistant team. It was a nice improvement over her other teams. By far not a must pull. But if you happen to get Mavuika, using them as a dual DPS is very, very fun. I also was spamming to get this. Like, I think that you can easily optimize lots of things to do better, but it was really fun to go in between Navia's skills, Mavuika's burst, and back again. Bennett has enough uptime for both of them to get everything done. Tons of front load, tons of nukes. It just feels really, really smooth and really, really good. You also get double pyro for the attack buff along with double geo, lots of crystallize for the geo res shred. Yeah, Bennett buffing both, Shalonen buffing both. It's an amazing dual DPS team. Mavuika really is a great dual DPS character. I did Ayato dual DPS as well, and you can do the same setup for Child. You're melting Mavuika's burst, and it's kind of similar idea to the Wriothesley one, where Ayato is providing the Hydro and Citlali is providing Cryo, and then Mavuika is going to be vaping from off-field. And we got some pretty reasonable clears from this team. I tried the Shalonen Bennett, but I couldn't get the uptime right and couldn't quite get the setup right for Ayato providing enough Hydro to vape stuff, so it just wasn't quite working for me. But I really like the Citlali Bennett version. You can really just run Mavuika, Citlali, Bennett, and any reasonably synergistic character, and if you're melting Mavuika's burst and the other character's attack scaling, you're going to do well. This is kind of like the Farina Bennett Xiangling core or the Hyperbloom core. If you have these 3 characters, they provide a core that's just super, super strong. So that is all the teams. I want to provide a couple disclaimers. I am not perfect, so all the stuff that I have said isn't the final word. It is my findings after a lot of testing. So I do my best to make it accurate and reliable and unbiased, and I try and just give my honest impressions. I'm not trying to oversell or undersell any particular character. You do have to listen through my preferences. So I really don't like Linny. I really do like Clorinde. You have to listen through my preferences. But when I talk about strength, I do my really hardest to talk strictly about strength and not let my biases show through to the strength of a character. So that's what I work really hard for. And I'm not perfect. I'm gonna get stuff wrong. I made a couple of corrections to the Seatlali video in the pinned comments. And if I make an egregious mistake, I do want you to hold me accountable. Obviously, you can leave a comment. It's better if it's a mistake, if it's like an egregious mistake that I should change or something I missed that was pretty big. It's better if you message me on Discord. I'm Jello Impact, all at one word on Discord, and just send me the mistake that I'm making or the misinformation or whatever, because I do want to get things right. And I'm saying this preemptively. There wasn't even anything big in the last one that I got wrong. It's just that if there is ever one thing, I'm not really attached to it ego-wise. Like, there's no ego here. I'm just trying to make the best and most reliable content for you. And testing, it's inherently biased. It's inherently subjective. It's inherently riddled with variance. And so I'm doing my best, but if we work as a community, I can even get better over time and more accurate over time. But to the best of my knowledge, everything I've said is as correct as I can make it. So moving on to value and power level. How valuable is Mavuika? Well, I would say very valuable. I think it's really relevant to talk about how valuable she is compared to Seatlali, because she definitely has the most value when paired with Seatlali. Melting her burst is just so good. It's crazy. So like, and Seatlali's supportive aspects are just so powerful. So running her as like a dual DPS with all of these carries, and probably more that I mentioned, like Ganyu, I guess there aren't really that many more that I missed, but possibly future characters as well. I think she's a reasonable upgrade to pretty much all the teams that I talked about here. I think that is most of them, it's their new best team. The only one maybe not is maybe Mualani, but I do think it still is her best team. It's just annoyingly unreliable. But I think somewhere in here is the best team for almost all of these characters. So she definitely fulfills her role as a Xiangling replacement in that way. And she also has the strongest DPS team with the best quality of life in the game, and her other setups are really good as well. She has good Bennettless teams, she has good Vape and Melt stuff. You do need, I would say, to make her like be a properly good DPS, you do need either Seatlali or Xilonen, but I don't feel like that's too much to ask. I feel like getting Seatlali or Xilonen, those are two of the strongest supports in the entire game, so you should have one or both of them. So I really don't think it's a knock against Mavuika. When we compare her supportive value to Seatlali, I think Seatlali provides slightly higher supportive value if you run one of the teams that is really benefiting from Seatlali, such as Arlecchino, and because a lot of the teams that Mavuika supports do want Seatlali as well. But it's really account dependent which of these has better supportive value, and I couldn't say definitively which one, although it's probably Seatlali overall if we were to like just give like a mix of everything, but it really is account dependent, so it's not very useful to talk about which one. In terms of DPS, we've got Mavuika, Neuvillette, and Arlecchino that have emerged as the new big three. I'll probably make another top 5 DPS video before my tier list, where I'll talk about which one I think. I don't know, I think that there's a lot. I think you can make an argument for maybe even each of them. I'm not sure, but I do think that Mavuika is the strongest DPS overall. There's maybe something to be said about Arlecchino and Neuvillette maybe being more flexible, but even then, I think Mavuika has a lot of teams, and I think, yeah, that's tough. I'm gonna have to think and test more as to like which one is definitively the best, but I do think it's Mavuika overall who's the best DPS. She's for sure the best character out of the three because of her supportive potential as well. But I think that all three of these characters are really, really strong. It's good to see that Arlecchino also got buffed by Seatlali, so Arlecchino lovers, you don't have to feel like you're super outclassed by Mavuika now, especially since Seatlali does make Arlecchino much more comfortable by giving her a shield. So if Seatlali didn't exist, then I would definitely say, you know, Mavuika power crept Arlecchino. Well, if Seatlali only existed for Mavuika, but because Seatlali is also broken for Arlecchino, yeah, it's really strong. All three of them have new best in slot teams at C0. All three of them have great Constellation 1s and great vertical investment potential. So I think that these three DPSs stand above the rest. I don't think it's worth, like, though, if you're like looking to upgrade from Arlecchino to Mavuika, I don't think that's a good idea. I think the better idea is to stick to your Arlecchino and get Seatlali as a support for your Arlecchino. You get Mavuika either if you want to play Mavuika for Mavuika DPS teams, or if Mavuika is a great dual DPS with one of your other characters. I think a lot of people actually should wish for Seatlali before Mavuika, just because a lot of the teams also want Seatlali. So, but that being said, Mavuika is definitely tier 0, one of the best characters in the game. I don't know which one of these two I think is better overall. It's hard to say. Probably Citlali. I don't know. Both are very broken characters. Granted, if you also count overworld potential, Mavuika really has got it going on. The other thing is just like the quality of life and ease of use versus someone like Arlecchino. Like Arlecchino does have good quality of life, but the AoE for Mavuika's charge attacks is just so huge. It's so easy to hit everyone. It's like pretty close to Neuvillette level AoE. Probably not quite, because Neuvillette hits in a pretty wide range and really, really far. But Mavuika's burst nuke hitting in such a large is a very generous AoE. It's very easy to line up multiple enemies. Even if they're like reasonably far apart, she's able to hit them. So, and Citlali applies cryo in a pretty wide AoE, so together she's able to melt in a huge AoE. And also having that front load is really valuable. You can just one-shot an entire wave and then do damage to the second wave. And that's another thing, is because she doesn't have to use Viridescent Venerer to shred resistances, she can use Xilonen or Citlali or both. They work in multi-wave, their abilities. So Shilonen's abilities work in multi-wave. Citlali continues applying cryo in multi-wave, so she can continue to melt as a fully buffed unit in multi-wave. And overall, that's just like, just a ton of quality of life that not a lot of DPSs have. Like, the only DPS that has as good of AoE as her is Neuvillette, and no one does as much single target damage as her, or AoE damage. So really, really crazy unit, both for quality of life and for power. And the fact that she doesn't require energy, as long as you run her with either Citlali or Xilonen, or again, even on the Clorinde teams, I was getting her burst back absolutely no problem. So you don't have to build energy, you don't have to rely on energy, just have to make sure you do your rotation. And that makes her really, really easy to play. And you don't have to waste any substats on ER or thinking about it. Yeah, definitely, like I said, just new staple character for me if I'm just trying to clear content or clear domains, which doesn't happen very often, because normally I like to use my favorites. I like to use my Clorinde, but Mavuika is just so efficient that I just find myself using her a ton overall. So yeah, even outside of Natlin, you can spam this and just go really far. Like, I did that wrong, but like, you can go far and fast and not with all that much cooldown. Let's start right here. Bike 1, and you're not only going vertical, but you're going really far horizontally. And that's really far, really fast, and vertical. Or you can just ride around like this. And this doesn't last as long, so that's a bit disappointing. But did you see how far we went when we were doing the jumpy thing? Like really, really, really far. We try this again. So anyways, I haven't min-maxed the bike form yet, but doing this tech, it just gives you great distance, even outside of Natlin. So I think that combined with, I mean, Citlali does have like decent utility, but it's nowhere near as good. It's just like a little extra jump. Like, it's nice. Takes some stamina. It's a nice little extra jump. Like, if we go up here, it's pretty high, but it's nowhere near what Mavuika can provide. So yeah, in terms of design, you know, has the bike grown on me at all? I don't hate it quite as much as I did. I think seeing like the animal look of it is a bit cool, but I still am not a fan. I like her burst animation a lot. I like her outfit design a ton, and I like her character model. Her character model actually is a bit different than the other characters. She's a bit less chibi. Like, if you look at Navia here, she has a bigger head, and Mavuika has a bit of a smaller head, and Mavuika's a bit taller, and she has a more adult proportion, and like a more realistic adult proportion, which looks really, really good. And I just think that this character overall looks amazing, and the burst animation looks amazing. So although I'm still not a fan of the bike, the quality of her animations and the quality of like her model, I'm really, really happy with, that do make up for it a lot. And I use her in the overworld constant. I also think that this idol is super hot. So yeah, I think Mavuika does her job as an Archon. I think she is, aside from me personally not enjoying the bike thing specifically, I think everything about her is perfect. The way her kit is, the support. The only disappointment is that she doesn't feel like enough of an upgrade for Mualani, and that's just me being, you know, selfishly wanting more of an upgrade for Mualani. Other than that, the dual DPS thing is ridiculously cool. The support thing is good, and the power level of her is just absurd. Maybe we'll make a video on, you know, is the power level a problem or something? I don't know. Is there power creep in Genshin? That might be time for that discussion again. But let me know If you got Mavuika, let me know if you're excited about her, if you learned anything from this video, what your favorite team is. Check out the team sheet down below, and while you're down there, please subscribe. But if you don't want to do any of that, that is totally fine. Just watching the video has been more than enough. Thanks so much. Bye for now.